Welcome to True Mindshifters. In this channel, we share our true stories to help you overcome fear, shame, and guilt. The true stories span our professional and personal life because, frankly, they're really blended. There are some differences, but hopefully, in the stories we share, we help you realize how there is a lot of similarity, and working in one space helps another, and vice versa. This week's episode is a little bit different because I don't have my partner here, Marina. And any good partnership, sometimes people need a break, and that's what is happening. Marina is focused on some other important work. And so you're going to hear a story just from one perspective, but hopefully that one perspective helps you think of your own life as well. If you find this topic interesting and think others could benefit from it as well, please like, subscribe, and share it. Since we started a couple months ago, we've covered a lot of ground, primarily focused on fear and also dug into how to overcome stress with somatic practices. We also have introduced our True Mindshifters framework. We introduced it and then moved along rather quickly. So in this episode, we're going to dig into that more deeply so that you can help create true change in your life as well. In looking at the True Mindshifters Change Framework, we have 4 steps, and the objective of that framework is to help create positive change and to overcome a trait or behavior that really doesn't serve you in your life. And I want to be clear about when I say it doesn't serve you. Sometimes we say people or things don't serve us. There are things that we may be doing ourselves that may not serve us. And frankly, I've had a realization in the last year that no one's here to serve me. No person, no thing, no place is here to serve me. I serve myself. And so I share the stories about my own background and experiences to help empower you, because sometimes we place our power for creating change or power for our situation or circumstances in the hands of others. And I'm not saying that people don't influence our lives, but we have a lot more control and influence over what happens in our lives. And this is why Marina and I focus on this channel and share our stories with you, is to highlight that and also to help you not feel alone. Because frankly, we've struggled a lot, and sometimes we struggle alone. And we think that a lot of different things can make us feel overwhelmed, or that change is not possible, or that things are always going to be as heavy as they are. And we're here to help show that that's not the case, that things are temporary, things can be solved, worked through. It might take years, it might take months, and in some cases with the somatic practices, it might take seconds. So let's attack this from all fronts. Let's dig into the change framework a little bit more, and I've got a professional and personal story to share with you. So the steps of the change framework, I will post up online so you can see them clearly. If you're watching this on a computer or device, hopefully you can see the image fairly well. The first step being C, honestly acknowledge to yourself that you have a trait, characteristic, behavior that does not help you be happy in your life. That's the first step. The second step is do. If you act on or exhibit that behavior, openly acknowledge that it happened to whomever is around and share that you are working on resolving that behavior. The third step is to believe. Believe, what a beautiful concept. Recognize the behavior before you act on it and acknowledge to yourself that you were able to prevent yourself from acting on it. Now, this doesn't just come. Step 3 doesn't just happen out of the blue. Believing comes from application, from creating small changes, even if they're in your own awareness that you did it, right? That you did exhibit the behavior, but you caught yourself and you recognized it. That's a huge part of creating change. And then the fourth step is enjoy. Sometimes we are so quick to move on, myself included. We're so quick to move on. And in the moving on, we're not really pausing and reflecting on, wow, I just created this change and there's something to celebrate. So enjoy the fact that you created the change. Realize that you didn't need to control the behavior consciously anymore because you've unprogrammed yourself from it. So this process, it has some pretty straightforward, direct language, but there's a lot of depth to it. And hence the deeper explanation of what it means, what it looks like, and how it's played out in my life as well as Marina's. Before you get to a change in your life, there's some honesty that has to happen. And I'm going to share an example where I was not being honest with myself. I was not seeing things from an alternate perspective to help me realize that what I was doing was hurting other people. This was at work many years ago, and it changed how I show up at work. And while I can have a pretty happy disposition, I'm quick to smile for the most part and enjoy life and just being there, being with you, being at work. There were processes that I would hear about from the group that I worked in. I worked in HR most of my career, and I would teach classes on leadership development. So I would hear managers' perspectives on things that HR had created. Well, this created a sense of advocacy in me and like, I'm going to go fight this battle for these managers who are telling me this process isn't any good and what's wrong and broken. And while HR did not work with a lot of managers to create the process, so there's a little bit of creating it in isolation, right? They created a performance review process and it was created within HR. The change adoption then, as it went to the managers, I was receiving all of their pain points. And they had some really good points. But what I did with their pain points and taking it back to the HR people who created the process where it was not good. I was in a meeting and I tore the process apart. I shared all the things that were wrong with it in the hopes and with the intention of appealing to the love for the managers. And of course, we want to give them a good process. But I ripped into this process and I ripped into this form and this process we were putting managers through from the manager's perspective, thinking I'm being an advocate and a champion. And I ripped it to shreds. I pointed out all the flaws that were wrong with it, all the things that were wrong with how it was implemented, and just sort of rubbed the pain of the managers all over the walls and the people in that room. But to me, I was tearing apart the process. I was tearing apart the form. And I mistakenly assumed and believed that other people's work, that as I tore apart their work, they would not have feelings about it because it was just me tearing apart the process and the form, right? No. Thankfully, a very seasoned HR leader pulled me into his office privately. He acknowledged the fire in my belly. He said, Eva, you remind me of me, and I just need you to know your fire in your belly is so good. Don't lose that. But now I have people, because of how you spoke to that form, I have people on my team that never want to be in a meeting with you again. It was like a gut punch. That was like a gut punch, and that was not my intention. My intention was not to alienate the people that created that form, but I wasn't even thinking about them. I was separating the form from the people, the work from the people, which was so naive and so simplistic and so missing the point. And I realized I had no regard for the work and the thought and the effort they put in. Granted, the manager's points of view were still valid, but how I brought it up was not okay. And I'm so grateful that that leader pulled me into their office and told me that I was approaching it. He didn't say you're wrong. He never said you're wrong. He never said that. He told me the impact that I had. Sometimes we need to have these blow ups and very honest people around us with courage and understanding and care uh, to tell us that what we're doing isn't working and, in fact, damaging, even if we have good intentions. In my own personal life, I can share that I would criticize my husband for his emotions. He would have emotions, they would be negative, they would sort of fly, they would come out hot and fast, and I didn't like it. It wasn't good role modeling. It was all sorts of things. It wasn't that what he was doing should be, you know, supported, but I would come in kind of guns a-blazing, too harsh, too directive, too direct. And it would just create more turmoil. So I share these stories as the setting of change in my life, and the change for how I showed up to critique or offer feedback on other people's work. It started immediately. I realized that I was not having the impact that I was intending to have, and I backed up. I backed up, and the first thing I did is I slowly stayed in step one, where I was honestly seeing myself. And in step two, where I was doing the thing that I needed to do differently, in some cases, it was so small, it was just pausing and saying nothing. I bought books about how to slow down, how to even, my own feelings or rush to anger or criticism or judgment. I I just slowed down. I learned how to slow down as best I could. And I learned that it takes about 6 seconds to have your chemicals release into your body. Maybe within a 30-second window, you can capture it and pull back, but you need to stay in a place of like doing nothing. So for me, it was learning to do nothing first, and then moving to reframing how I speak to things and acknowledging people's contributions and working hard to ensure our expectations as we collaborate is set early, to invite more people earlier into the process. In terms of believing this, I saw immediate results. And that's the one beautiful thing I will say. When you change your behavior, when you change your communication, your negative energy, your negative spin or thoughts, that will immediately change the dynamics with other people. Now, there may be repair. I'm not saying that repairing relationships isn't, you know, a switch you just turn on, you start pausing and talking differently, and all of a sudden everything's better. But it creates a different dynamic immediately in the conversations you do have. So the power of pausing, I am a huge advocate of. And in terms of seeing immediate results, it started to change everything. At home, I was a much slower student, and I haven't had someone other than my husband who would attempt to tell me in his own struggle that he needed something different. And I would sort of push it off because I was too busy focused on his behavior that was sometimes not okay, right? And I was so focused on that that I wasn't looking at my own behavior of what do I do when he loses his temper? What do I do when he gets overwhelmed? Am I supportive? That lesson didn't come until more recently in my life. And I think that this is why I'm very devoted to sharing openly and transparently. If for whatever reason, I think maybe the greater accountability happens at work. And so it's easier at work. But at home, it's just you and your partner, your family, and the four walls. So it's slower. You don't have people on the inner circle. I just said four walls, but you don't have people on the inside of your family truly observing it. And frankly, this insight came from working with someone who's helping us heal in our life. So if you can get someone else to help you honestly see the patterns that you have in your own life to make things better, definitely work with people who can help you. And I don't encourage going to therapy or engaging in healing to look at, well, that other person did this. And you might come in that way, but if that's where you're staying, that's you're going to be on a very slow path to change. That will be very slow. The moment you start to choose and to take ownership for your own change, then that's when the magic happens. When you decide, So this is just a few examples of how I have applied change in my own life in terms of the work situation and me being too direct. And also when my husband would have his struggles, my reaction to those. And I realized I needed to be more supportive. It took me a long time to be honest with myself about what I could do differently, but it has truly been a game changer. And while you know, I'm not getting a performance review at home, I can tell you that I see the reward in my efforts in a more intimate, close, and happier relationship. And we're navigating more quickly through any struggles. And I would just encourage anyone who is struggling, even though there may be challenges with other people, looking at yourself of how you can slow down or what you can do differently that doesn't add fuel to the fire or completely, abandon other people or treat them in what I call a disposable manner and like their feelings don't matter, only mine do. So I hope this helps. And we are always looking to provide you with stories that empower you and give you support and love. I hope this week did just that. And we also welcome your feedback and comments. If this is helpful, we'd love to know. Thank you so much.